Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome back once again to JJ's PC Builds. We got another video for you today. But if you're first time here, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Don't forget about the notification bell so you know when I post the next video. Today, we're going to be talking about the DRAM shortage, which is the PC system RAM. And what's going on. I had this article that was sent over to me by Mr. Machine. He caught it yesterday, so I said I'm going to go ahead and make a video on it today. So let's go ahead and just jump to the action screen and see what's cooking. And by the way, don't forget your drink and snacks. By the way, I got mine. It's going to be a good one. So, ooh, that was spicy. Ugh. Let's go ahead and get to the action screen and see what I got cooking. Alrighty, we jumped over here onto the action screen. Let's see what we got cooking here. This says right here, we got the big cursor, by the way. We got DRAM supply shortage unlikely to be resolved until the first half of 2027. This was translated, guys, so keep in mind, this is translated, so we're doing the best we can with this. Samsung and SK Hynix focusing on profitability rather than expanding supply. We will minimize the risk of oversupply, Samsung says. It will be difficult to resolve the supply shortage in the first half of 2027, SK Hynix says. And Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, which controlled approximately 70% of the global DRAM market, recently expressed a cautious stance on the possibility of aggressive supply expansion at investor relations sessions for global investment banks as the semiconductor supply shortage spreads from server to PC and smartphones. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix have announced production strategies focused on profitability. So they're focused on their self when it comes to profitability. So keep that in mind. Leading to growing expectations that the memory super boom will continue beyond 2028. According to the industry sources, on the 1st of December, Samsung Electronics unveiled a conservative semiconductor supply strategy at an investor relations session hosted by Morgan Stanley on the 23rd of last month, which would be November. Samsung Electronics explained, rather than rapidly expanding facilities, we will pursue a strategy of maintaining long-term profitability, and we will minimize the risk of oversupply through a capital expenditure, CapEx. Strategy that balances customer demand and price. Samsung Electronics memory division reportedly only able to supply about 70% of the DRAM orders. As the supply shortage worsens, I don't like the way that sounds, the memory division is reportedly carefully reviewing requests for long-term mobile DRAM supply contracts from major customers. A company official stated, customers want long-term contracts lasting several years. But Samsung Electronics does not want to tie up. Oh, I don't like how that sounds. It's supplied to a specific consumer or customer in a situation where the prices are skyrocketing. So, looking and feeling that, guys, what they're saying is this. Basically, they don't want to do a long-term contract with any of the major suppliers. Because if they do a long-term contract, that means they're locked into that price. So, in order for them to be able to get profitability, they want to do short-term contracts, as stated. So instead of doing it long-term, like they're locked into a 5-year contract, they might do like 6 months contracts or 1-year contracts in order to stay with the curve of the pricing. So they feel like they're being ripped off, basically. It's the reason why they're doing this. So me, and if I was in their shoes, I would think the same thing, that these big manufacturers that wanting the chips are kind of not helping the situation, because these companies that have to make the chips, they have to be able to keep up with the price gap that's in between how much it costs, the overhead compared to their profitability, which they're not making. So if a company is not making any profit and they're just breaking even, yeah, that's going to become a big problem. So back to the story. I'll tell you, it's just SK Hynix is doing the same as well with Samsung, so they're both going to be doing the same. At recent investor relations event hosted by Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, SK Hynix announced that it would convert about half of its general purpose DRAM production capacity to the latest 10 nanometer. Well, they say nanometer, it says, 1/1000th of a meter. So, and let's see, 6th generation 1C DRAM, however. SK Hynix explained that this will not be enough to meet the customer demand. A company officially stated, we plan to invest approximately 30% of our revenue in facilities by 2026 to accelerate the transition to 1C DRAM. So this is going to be a new type of DRAM, I guess. But it will be short-term contracts. There's no more long-term contracts. So who knows how long they're going to be. They could be 1 month, they could be 6 months, they could be 8 months, they could be anything that they're considering. Anticipation of continuing DRAM prices increase for several years. Hear what I'm saying. Continued DRAM prices let me say it again. Continued DRAM price increases for several years. So that means it's going to keep going on and on and on. So if it comes down to it and, you're looking for a stick of RAM, that price is going to gradually go up and up and up. Now, with RAM prices right now, that we were sitting there yesterday, looking, I think it was yesterday or the day before, either one, we did it on a live stream. We looked at DRAM prices, like for 6,000 megahertz CL30, some RAM is going up and up and up, over $500 to $1,000 for 64 gigs. For 64 gigs, they're saying around $500-600. Okay, for 128 gigabytes, 2 sticks, you're looking at $1,100. That's expensive on the consumer. You see any one of the consumers, you got 60%. 60% of the consumers that are living paycheck to paycheck. Okay, and then you break down the 40%, 35% are just, mid-range and just hanging over the top. And then you get the other 5%, which can buy it and they don't have a problem with it. So you break it all down, they're going to be losing a lot of customers because they're not going to be able to afford system RAM. Okay, now I was lucky that Mr. Machine sent me over SK Hynix RAM, which is the CRAS 6,000 megahertz CL28, 32 gigs, and he got that for $109. That's not a bad deal. Okay, for 32 gigs. Now, if I would have went 64 gigs, that would have probably doubled. It would have been like $200 and some, like $220, $230 for 2 sticks. Now, if I went 64 gigs. Now, if I want to decide to go 64 gigs, you can't buy the CRAS RAM anywhere because Hynix put a halt on it and they're not going to be selling it anymore. So, it looks like that it's going to be a limited supply when it comes to RAM sticks. A lot of people are sitting there saying, well, I'll go to DDR4. Well, you go to DDR4. DDR4 prices rose up about 20% since a couple days ago. And, with the 60% increase on the DDR5 RAM, it's stupid. It's crazy, and I don't really see if it's, with the market's going to tank on this. Everybody says, oh, they're just using it for those big servers, that, the big AI memory training servers and stuff like that. No, it's not so much that. It's basically they're revamping the market because they want to be able to get their hands into the pie and get some of that money that all these big companies were making over them. So basically the profits are like this. Let's say, for example, you got Nvidia buying the chips, buying VRAM chips, okay? And they buy it in abundance and they get a great deal. But they got a long-term contract, like let's say 5 years. They're locked into that price for 5 years. So Nvidia can charge whatever prices they want above what they paid for it. So basically they can charge double. Nvidia can charge double for the RAM chips to any one of the AIB partners, and when they go to make their cards, now they got to charge the customer another third. So basically you go, Nvidia charges 2/3, they pay 1/3, they charge 2/3, so they make double their money, and then they charge the AIB partners that third. So basically, you're paying double on the AIB partners are paying double on the RAM, the VRAM. So now they're charging the customers that double, and now we're seeing the graphics card prices rise. And you know where it's coming from. Instead of the AIB partners going direct to the manufacturers, which they should have in the beginning, instead of going to one company and say, okay, well, you're going to give me your GPU chip, and you're going to sell me the RAM along with it. Now they're going to sell it at a higher price because the RAM comes along with it. Remember, NVIDIA is not making the PCBs. They're not putting all the components on there and everything else. Now, those companies, those AIB partners like Asus, Gigabyte, ASRock, and MSI, the main companies, they got to outsource to different companies to have these GPUs built. So now that they have to get the product, get the pieces, and then send it to the manufacturer and say, hey, can you build this for me? So now they got another cost. So adding all this goddamn cost that they're doing is really stupid. Instead of them just saying, okay, well, let's just let the manufacturer that's manufacturing these cards source everything in one, and then we'll pay that price. But they don't want to do that because now they're going to be paying 3 times that price to have the graphics cards built. Now they're going to have to charge another 2 times that price, so that's 5 times over what it actually cost. So basically, that's why we're seeing the high prices right now, is because basically they have to outsource all their extra components and everything else, and the components are not cheap anymore. Even the cheap components are not cheap anymore. It's just crazy, sick, stupid. It's basically, it's not, companies not staying on top of the ball. So with, Asus, ASRock, MSI, and Gigabyte, they can all outsource those VRAM chips from somewhere else. They don't have to buy it from NVIDIA. NVIDIA's charging double over on that, so they make some money off of that. And that's where, you got Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron getting pissed off. But it seems like Micron's not saying too much at this point right now, but we'll see if something's being said later on. But I'll let you know if they do. If I find out they do, then I'm going to put them all into the bunch. Those are your 3 main manufacturers for VRAM chips, your for your system RAM. Sorry, I had like a little bit of a hang-up moment there. But, when they're making all those chips, and they're not making any money, because you got companies over here, paying a locked-in amount, these companies are pissed. These companies have had enough. And now who suffers through this all? The consumer, the gamers, the ones that are paying for the product. Now we're going to suffer for the shortcomings of these big companies. I'm sure a $5 trillion company has really made a lot of money, and it's the top on the market right now. But, and with them saying, to their base, go outsource your parts. We'll sell you the GPU die, but go outsource the rest of your parts. Now, them being dependent, Asus is probably not really dependent on it anyway. But it depends on the bin of the die. If they're getting good die bin, if they're getting the chips and they were at a good bin, like second or third, because usually I'm thinking we got like 3rd rated bin on the chips anyway. But That's for another talk, another video, and another way. I laid it all out on the line, guys. I brought this information to you because it was brought to me by my good old loyal subscriber, Mr. Machine. He says, check this out. I checked it out. I took you guys along with me to see what the scoop is, and it seems like this is about correct. We all knew these companies were going to do this sooner or later. You know, after a certain amount of years, and they're not making money. It's just they're not making money. So, and if they're not making money, they can't pay their employees, and they can't, you know, they have their overhead too. So, you know, that's the reason why this has all come about. It seems like a little bit of a battle between the GPU manufacturers and the RAM manufacturers for, you know, your system RAM. Looks like those manufacturers going back and forth with Samsung, SK Hynix, and probably they're doing Micron too. So, but anyway, guys, if you made it to the end of the video and you did enjoy it, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Don't forget about the notification bell so you know when I post the next video. Until the next time and the next video, you know who it is, and we'll see you on the next one.
Take shit, I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.